Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm working on this fallen angel and I decided that I wanted to paint this just because I haven't seen fallen angels depicted in this way. Usually when you see fallen angels, they're usually some sort of human figure or dark figure or like the devil, the generic devil. So I just want to do something that is kind of out of the box, at least for me, and something that I haven't seen. Through this process, I also realized that I like making my sketches in charcoal. I started doing this in my last painting, and honestly, it'll definitely be something that I do here on out. And if you're wondering if I sealed the charcoal, no, I didn't. I don't seal really any of my sketches, so I'm basically just doing like a paint, light wash of acrylic paint. And right now, I know it looks like a bad attempt at abstract, but it's fine. It'll look better, I swear. I don't seal in the charcoal, so I do have fixative, but I don't use it because it's extremely toxic, and I hear it causes cancer. Even though paint causes cancer, but like still, I'm not gonna use it. So that's why I don't use it. Plus, I have like pets and stuff, and I don't want them to end up breathing in that type of toxic stuff, so I just don't use it. Definitely, if I was in the studio, I would definitely use it, but since I'm not and I'm working from my art studio in my living room, well, right now I'm outside, but you get the point. I would definitely say the wings were the most challenging part. So for this painting, I wanted to try something new and make the wings more dynamic. Usually in my angel paintings, my wings are pretty stagnant. They kind of like don't have much movement. But for this one, I wanted to make sure that it have had some sort of movement, so I'm kind of doing some sort of improvement each time that I paint. And if you're wondering, no, the wings are not going to be gray. I just needed a neutral base to kind of see how I wanted the feathers to lay out before I actually started putting in color. This is why I also started painting in the eyes. I ended up making them smaller just because they started looking like googly eyes, and that's not what I was going for. So I did end up making them smaller. I just needed the idea of how I was going to place them before I committed to that spot. For this painting in particular, I did test out a lot of colors just because I never really painted with a red background. So I did want to try to see how at least teal looked up against red. And I actually did like how the teal looked. But the reason why the wings were highlighted in this teal color, again, I needed to see where I wanted the feathers to fall. And after I added in like this dark brown, I had a hard time seeing where I wanted the feathers to go, so I ended up kind of doing this like little outline in teal. Honestly, originally the color was supposed to be black, but when I attempted to do black, it looked extremely flat, and I didn't know how to basically fix the problem. So, in order to, I guess, change my design a little bit, I ended up going with kind of like brown. Well, not kind of. It was definitely brown wings, but the ones that are opened, it's like a tannish color. And I used an owl as a reference just because I like the color of their Although
Wings.
I still wish that the black did end up working out. Maybe I'll attempt it again, but for this painting, it wasn't working out. So I definitely had to pivot. Not to mention, during this entire process, it was kind of agonizing. I honestly didn't like the way that it was turning out until like the very end. And I do feel like the reason why I didn't really like it, well, for the most part, I was still working on the underpainting, and the underpainting wasn't really turning out the way that I wanted it to turn out. So I think that's probably why. The reason why I did this extensive of an underpainting is because once I get to the oil painting level, I wanted it to be pretty easy, kind of like a color by number type of deal. But yeah, hey y'all, okay, so I know it's been a few days since you've seen the progress of this painting, so right now I'm actually about to go over it with oil and hopefully I'm able to finish it today because honestly, I'm not gonna touch it anymore after today. I'm kind of over it. I'm not even gonna lie. Anyway, let's get into the oil painting section. Sorry for y'all missing the the chunk of this being done. Anyway, let's get to it. I did end up finishing most of the wings off of camera. Well, I finished the whole underpainting off of camera just because it was kind of easier to do it that way. So now I'm just doing a layer of oil paint over the entire underpainting that I've made. And do keep in mind that even though I already have the colors on the palette, they'll kind of change based on the type of color that I put on there. And not all the colors are going to be like one to one, especially since I have more of a broader palette, at least for my oil paints, than I do for my acrylics. Like, for example, the orange that I did for the background, I had to mix that color, but for my oil paint, I actually have an orange oil paint that I can just use for the background. So I did end up starting off with the eyes, and I think I also did this on live stream. So I live streamed this, and then I also filmed this just in case y'all couldn't tune into the live stream. Here's like basically the whole process of it cut down in 9 minutes. And then to even get to this point, I think it took like a week and a half to even get to this point. And to be fair, I thought this process was going to be much faster than how long it actually took. Do you see how rough I'm being? Like how rough I am with my brushes? It's ridiculous. This is why I can't spend money on brushes. But back to what I was saying. Um it took much longer than I was expecting originally, which is probably why I was kind of sick and tired of doing it. And plus, it wasn't really looking the way that I wanted it to look. And I think definitely during this point, I was liking it way more. I think it's interesting because originally I wanted to mute my colors a little bit more than how the actual outcome came out. Every time I try to like mute my colors, they end up being super bright and vibrant, and I'm trying, y'all. It's hard. I do like the way that the bright and vibrant colors kind of came out, so I'm happy with it. So I wonder if y'all can tell the difference between some of the colors that it like was originally, like especially the reds and the orange. It's definitely much more like vibrant, but also the red is much more deep than the original red that I used. I think for my acrylic paint, yeah, I definitely used cadmium red, and for the oil paint, I used a different type of red. I can't remember the name, but it wasn't cadmium red, which is why the colors look a little bit more rich than they did with the acrylic paint, which I find is kind of interesting. Also, for the darkest points in the painting, it's actually not black. It's a super dark green. So basically, I used phthalo green and burnt umber to make that black. I think I also added a little bit of phthalo blue, but for the most part, it's phthalo green and burnt umber to make this dark, rich, quote unquote, black. And for this point of the painting, I kind of make sure that the colors are utilized in all aspects of the paint. So for the super, super dark green, I have it in the feathers, I have it in the eyes, I have it in the surrounding areas. Same with the blue. The blue is in the feathers, in the eyes, and in the sky, just so it all kind of correlates to be the same in a sense. Will have some sort of relationship within the painting. I always find it super interesting because every time I look at a painting that I've done and I'm looking at the footage, now that it's been done, I really like the way that I've done the background or kind of like the sky. It's definitely something different that I haven't done before, and I should probably do more often because this looks really cool. And as you can see, I'm like working on the feathers. So basically, when I'm doing any sort of feathers on anything, to be honest, I usually start off with my darkest darks and then I work my way over that just because I want to make sure that it's kind of mixing in with the lighter colors that I'm putting onto the feathers and has like this layering effect. I've also been told my feathers look pretty soft, so this is kind of how I achieve this softness to the feathers by kind of mixing the other colors that are also in. And I finally finished the painting, so this is kind of how it turned out. Right now I have a pretty harsh light on it because I finished it at night. So this is like a close-up of how everything is looking in the painting. Like the eyes look so crazy to me. Like I just love how they look. They look so soft, and I like how they're not as noticeable. So it takes someone to actually look at the painting to notice where all of the eyes are. But now looking at it, I may go back in and add some orange to the feathers just to kind of make sure that they're seen in every angle and place in the painting and not just kind of surrounding my fallen angel. But other than that, I think that's my only critique that I can see, at least right now. I definitely need to add the orange back in. And I also did take another recording of it outside, which will be shown pretty soon in the video anyway. But yeah, here it is.